Hello, everybody. Looking back to what happened to me and others and the world in general in the retrospective, I would like to say that I also rewatching the videos, other videos by David Icke, besides that person named Arizona Wilder, who was programmed as dissociative identity disorder person to be a high priestess for the rituals and the psychic that was serving the cabal. So Credo Mutwa was an African shaman who was talking about alien species and alternative version of Genesis, and he was talking about his experiences and that people in Africa actually encountered those species and tried to hunt for them. He also spoke at length in defense of rich African heritage because a lot of people still consider Africans to be backwards and barbarians. So anyways, first he talked about Chitauri. The word Chitauri means dictators, those who dictate the law, a race of reptilian creatures that have ruled the world for millennia. The Chitauri could change their shape at will and intermarry with humans. There are dozens of legends in which lizards, taking the form of women, taking their lives, married the men of the Zulu royal clans. The substitution of princesses was sometimes found out. There are many fascinating tales that lizards were able to take the form of animals. These creatures, according to Credo Mutwa, do exist, and no matter where you are, in South, East, West, and Central Africa, everywhere you will find that the descriptions of these creatures are similar. More than 500 tribes in various parts of Africa describe similar creatures. They have a large head and a tail. Height is about 3 meters. They have flexible fingers devoid of joints. The historical homeland of the Chitauri is the red star called Ison Nkanyamba by the Zulus. Although Mutwa speaks of Alpha Centauri, this corresponds according to the descriptions of the Africans to Aldebaran, a Tau, a red star in the background of the Hyades star cluster about 65 light years from the solar system. Once they fought against the creator god Gugungu in order to seize control of the universe. In a terrible battle, they were thrown to the ground, where they hid in underground cities. The Chitauri feed on human energy, the dark force that humans generate in war, fear, terror, and torment. But they do not disdain blood either, because they physically cannot eat solid food. Chitauri have bright yellow eyes that can glow in the dark. Credo Mutwa compares these eyes to the eyes of a mamba snake. Some of them have a normal head without horns. This is the lowest ranking. But those advanced in the hierarchy have a set of sharp horns on their heads. The vibe given by Credo Mutwa as an identity matches the description of Darth Maul from the Star Wars. Chitauri kings have dark backbone from the forehead to the back of the head. The skin is scaly, a large forehead, in the middle of which is an eye that closes not from top to bottom, but from side to side. The Chitauri's central eye is the eye that kills. People say that when Chitauri have skirmishes between two power branches, their bodies begin to glow. The very manifestations of aggressions towards their own kind are incomprehensible, and the Africans refer to them as duels. That is why it is not recommended to go to certain areas at night. This in Zimbabwe include Matopo. This is where the giant stone is placed in a pyramid and that's where people disappear. Cecil John Rhodes was buried there. Jebulian. Jebulian is the name of the leader of the Chitauri, the head. It has long horns on its head. It is also called Umbaba Zamahongo. It is reported that he fled the eastern lands due to a fight with one of his sons and took refuge deep underground in a cave. The ground was the Genesis. The earth was covered with a thick layer of fog, in which the sun could be guessed only by the movement of light. The rain always fell in fine drizzle, and there was never a storm. The world was covered with endless forest, and people lived peacefully and happily, communicating not with words but through consciousness. A husband could call his wife by thinking of her. The hunter, living for prey, called the animal and it came. There was no violence because the animals themselves chose the most tired and old from the herd to offer the hunter, and the man thanks nature, asking for forgiveness from the animal. Man asked for food, nature gave voluntarily. He walked up to the tree thinking about fruit, and the tree let the fruits fall to the ground. The man took them. The Chitauri then descended to earth in a terrifying bow-like vessels flying through the air that made noise and fire. The Chitauri drove the people together with the power of lightning whips. It was reported that they are gods from heaven and people will receive many great gifts from them. They took away the ability to communicate telepathically at the distance from people, the power to move objects with the help of thought, but in return they gave speech. People paid a high price to discover that speech has divided them because the Chitauri gave people different languages, which led to misunderstanding. The Chitauri put other people in charge to rule over them. Quote, "These are your kings, these are your leaders. They have our blood in them. They are our children and you must listen to them because they will voice our will." The Chitauri forced people to dig mines, look for minerals and metals. Then they removed the rain-bearing darkness from heaven, and for the first time since the day of creation, people saw the stars. They said that people were mistaken in thinking that God dwells on earth. God lives in heaven, they said, and these who die do not go down but go up. The Chitauri said that the task of people is to change the earth so much as to make it convenient for God, so that one day He will come and dwell there, and people for this will be rewarded with great power and great wealth. Here Mutwa lamented that in many years of study, many years of initiation into the mysteries of African shamanism, learning, wisdom and knowledge, he kept wondering why we human beings are actually destroying the earth we live on. At present, the traditional religions of Africa are split in two parts. There are those who believe that the dead are Abapansi, which means those who are below, those who are underground. Others talk about Abapizulu. The word Abapizulu means those who are above, and the word Abapansi means the oldest name for the spirits of the dead, those who are underground. Hundreds of tribes profess a strange dual belief that the dead go to heaven, and then another belief that the dead go underground. The belief that the dead go underground dates back to the days when Africans believed that their god was a woman, a great goddess, and this contrasts with the Abapizulus belief that God is man who dwells in heaven. Mutwa claimed to have seen Chitauri. He describes how he was kidnapped on Mount Inyangani. He believes that these are not aliens who visit us from time to time. He doesn't know. Perhaps they are parallel human race from the dinosaurs. They are part of us, and that makes them even more dangerous. They know the weaknesses of our mind, and they know their strengths. Mandinda. Mandinda means tormentors. These are creatures of small stature like African pygmies. Their heads are as big as a ripe watermelon. They have thin and long limbs, thin fingers, more joints than humans. They have strange eyes that look like glasses. Kredamutva describes meeting them and what he managed to see behind the glasses, red eyes with vertical slits like those of cats. They have a strong smell similar to the smell of sulfur or heated copper. It's described as gray. Matwa considered this race to be subordinate to Chitauri. The Mandinda act as servants and are often involved in kidnappings, abductions. Judging by their cold reaction to stimuli noticed by Africans, these are biomachines or very similar to them. Sometimes those who do not have particularly kosher food preference, they hunt them as prey because everything that moves is not a person for them. Mutaba says that it was difficult to dismember their corpses because of the very strong gray skin, which is like a shell or overalls, and under it, at the bottom, the skin is ordinary pink with closely fitting blood vessels. Wazungu. Africans describe several major races of gods, and one of them is Wazungu. Long before the white men got far into the jungle, the Africans had encountered a race similar to the whites, the Northern Europeans, Aryans. They are tall, well-built, with slightly slanting blue eyes and blonde hair. Used vehicles similar to boomerangs. By the way, those who believe that the boomerang belongs only to Australian aborigines are mistaken. Wazungu are mostly neutral towards Africans, but Mutwa says he saw them around Chitauri. Wazungu, the word understanding is God, and literally means people from the ashes of the devil. Modern white Zulus call Umulungu. This is about the same in meaning. Chitauri Mountain. The places where Chitauri are most often encountered are Matopo and Inyangani. According to Mutwa, thousands of people disappear there. In Africa, tens of thousands disappear every month. No one counts them. Children disappear, and they are never seen again or found. Many people, especially in the newspaper industry, think that this is the result of child prostitution business, but these are by no means street children, and among them are children of white parents as well, if we are talking about South Africa. The mines in the Sun City area and the military bases in Swaziland and Botswana are described there. Many specifically secret and clearly human dungeons in the area of which the Africans preferred not to meddle unnecessarily. Losses are very common there, missing people. Mutwa describes several cases of specific abductions. This is due, in his opinion, to the fact that the Chitauri get sick, and their illness requires a certain treatment in order to feed the energy of fear and horror of people. I will not retell the details. Those who wish can read it themselves. The blood that saves the Chitauri must be the blood of a very frightened human. So, again, I wanted to read up a couple of sentences about their genesis. The Chitauri drove the people together with the power of lightning whips. It was reported that they are gods from heaven by them, and people will receive many great gifts from them. They took away from people the ability to communicate telepathically at the distance, the power to move objects with the help of thought, but in return they gave the speech. So as you may imagine, those Asian monuments, such as pyramids and other megalithic structures, could have been moved or could have been curved just by the power of thoughts. And also that's similar to how Tesla reportedly described his own work of mind. He had this imagination that he could imagine objects that he wished in front of him, the fantasies in front of him. He could envision them very clearly as objects, so as he could not differentiate what was real in front of him and what was the object that he just imagined. So these are clearly what would be described as some kind of schizophrenia or illusions or delirium or something like that. But that's how vivid his imagination was. And so in case you have been wondering what these recent tweets about Ukraine were in favor of Russia, there are these light poles that have been observed around some Russian cities, and people say that it's some say that it's some kind of Russian weapon that is called Peresvet, and that it shuts down the satellites. So basically he was speaking in favor of Russia and peace and against Ukraine because he was afraid that his satellites would be shunned and jammed, which in fact happened anyways. So they report that those lightning bolts, as they call them, are some kind of a weapon that shuts down satellites, and some say that they are something based on mirrors that are made in a spiral form that change Earth's gravitational field and that changes the reality, and that it switches off the grid which is up in the space, which makes people which prevents people from having telekinesis and clairvoyance, clairaudience, and which prevents them from seeing the future, and which keeps them in a trance hypnotic state and in a certain frequency. So basically those poles reported to be the shield that breaks the spell, so to say, by other accounts. So if you want, you can view them.
Что это такое? И там такое же. Похоже на какие-то прожектора. Что это такое? И там такое же.
So let's ask English professors with their genius English science what the torsion field is. Torsion field is a pseudoscience. A torsion field, also called the axion field, spin field, spinor field, and macrolepton field, is a feature of pseudoscientific proposals that the quantum spin of particles can be used to cause emanations to carry information through vacuum orders or magnitude faster than the speed of light. Spin-spin interaction can be transmitted through space at speeds of at least up to 10 by 9 degrees times the speed of light via a special kind of field making faster than light travel, extrasensory perception, homeopathy, levitation, and other paranormal phenomena possible. The first torsion field proposals were proposed in the late Soviet Union by a group of physicists in the 1980s who loosely based their ideas on Einstein-Cartan theory and some varied solution of Maxwell's equations that do not have a solid grounding in scientific fact. The group, led by Anatoly Akimov and Gennady Shipov, began to research at the state-sponsored Center of Non-Traditional Technology. They disbanded in 1991 when their research was exposed by physicist Evgeny Alexandrov as a fraud and embezzlement of government funding. Akimov and Shipov received financing for torsion field research from the Russian Ministry of Science from 1992 to 1995 and from the Russian Ministry of Defense from 1996 to 1997, and secretly continued their research with a private enterprise called the International Institute of Theoretical and Applied Physics, later called UVITOR. Presently championed exclusively outside of reputable scientific research due to its lack of evidence and absence of sound theoretical underpinning, the theory has been used to proclaim faster-than-light travel, extrasensory perception, homeopathy, levitation, and other paranormal phenomena, and has been used to provide rationale for the purported functioning of miracle cures and similar products. These claims have no independent backing. In physics, a field is an assignment of quantity vector tensor spinor to every point of the space containing it. The word torsion refers to any variable that describes rotation. Thus, torsion fields of any physical value reasonably described as torsion do exist in established physics aside from this pseudoscientific case where the terms have been misappropriated. For example, an electromagnetic wave with circular polarization or the stress tensor of a solid body under torsion stress can be described as a torsion field, although such usage is rare. The torsion tensor is a quantity in general relativity and plays an important role in Einstein-Cartan theory. Spinor fields, in particular fermionic fields, are existing concepts for particle physics and quantum field theory. Despite the several obvious contradictions with established physics, along with associated statements by believers criticized as being nonsensical by reputable scientists, those who give you DNA, torsion fields have been embraced as an explanation for claims of homeopathic cures, telepathy, telekinesis, levitation, clairvoyance, ESP, extrasensory perception, and other paranormal phenomena. The harnessing of torsion fields has been claimed to make everything possible, from miracle cure devices, including devices that cure alcohol addiction, to working perpetual motion machines, stargates, UFO propulsion analogs, and weapons of mass destruction. Such as devices, in particular the miracle cube, also have been patented, manufactured, and sold. Proponents of torsion field have sought a large-scale government and military contracts at different times, starting with 1987 application of the Ministry of Defense of the USSR requesting funding to develop highly reliable detection of an enemy strategic weapons, ICBM, nuclear submarine aircraft, etc., the long-range destruction of enemy strategic weapons without contact, covert jamming-resistant communications with objects in outer space, on Earth, underground and underwater, mobile equipment on gravitational principles, and psychophysical and biomedical influence on troops and the population. The Soviet government allocated 500 million rubles, about $7 million to the exchange for this research. Another example of such funding application was an experiment conducted by the Russian private research group VENT, which contained to lower resistivity copper. So